I've officially reacted to every main Radiohead album on this channel. Jesus, it's been a while since I started doing this, and to celebrate the completion of the albums, I thought it'd be a good idea to gauge where I'd rank the albums as of now. And I'll throw in the Smiles new album for good measure. Now let's start with the stinkiest Radiohead album. Just kidding, there isn't a stinky Radiohead album. Number 10, The King of Limbs. Now I'll be the first to admit, let it be known publicly and privately, there's a hugely subjective component to music. I know. It's not entirely subjective though, as there are culturally agreed upon standards of musical quality. Wailing incomprehensibly over the banging of random implements is probably not as musically profound as a piece containing forward-thinking blending of genres with inspiration from centuries of prior creations. So this might be my traditionally wired music brain, but the abstract yet robotic quality of this album just didn't sit right with me. It never hit the highs of other Radiohead albums, but it also managed to reach some of the lowest lows, with tracks like Bloom sounding like the band throwing a lot of cool and beautiful, yet totally unrelated concepts together. I always find Radiohead at their strongest when what they're creating feels spontaneous and organic, yet is clearly intentionally calculated. This album can feel randomly, yet overly programmed, which is not a good combination that inspires me to return. I will say I applaud artists who wade into the uncertain waters of progressive creation, but when you're so far from shore, sometimes you sink. Now it's not that bad, there are still some highlights of the album, but compared to the rest of the Radiohead discography, it definitely places last for now. Number 9, Pablo Honey. In stark contrast to the abstract antics of The King of Limbs, Pablo Honey is a raw, unfiltered look at the band's origins. There are some unbelievably dated tracks on here, particularly songs like Prove Yourself and I Can't. They show their age in their production and cheesy 90s rock. A shocking change for somebody who started with their later works. However, there are some real gems on here, from the strong opener of You to the charming Vegetable. Wow, I didn't think I'd ever say a charming vegetable. The crown jewel of the album, apart from the global hit of Creep, is undoubtedly Blowout, which is a sample of the band's future fusion of jazz and progressive elements into their sound. It begins with a subdued, finger-plucked rhythmic jazz chord cascading over delicate, pulsating drums and tasteful bass. Tom's voice soars gracefully above this sound palette, and you can see why they chose to delve further into this sound on future records. Then it adds the best of their heavier side, incorporating disturbing and ear-melting distortion and mayhem into the mix. It really is a top-tier Radiohead song on an album many people overlook. While there are some forgettable tracks on here, there are some great ones that really stick with me, which helps this album edge out The King of Limbs. Number 8, Amnesiac. Amnesiac is an album of two sides. On the one hand, it has some of the strongest ever Radiohead songs. From Pyramid Song to You and Whose Army, I Might Be Wrong and Life in a Glass House. Then it has some really forgettable songs like Polk Pull and Hunting Bears. While they play like ASMR, fun to listen to for a moment, there is rarely ever a compelling reason for me to want to listen to these songs again. This album feels inconsistent, but when it hits its stride, it might be the best they have to offer. My personal favorite is the ominous yet sultry Life in a Glass House, which again is a closer, and again builds on the jazzy tendencies the band has displayed previously. Except in this case, they utilize woodwinds and horns and strings to build a truly unique atmosphere. It's full of bombast, intrigue, and gorgeous chordal and melodic choices. It's ambitious and wacky, and when you drop gems like that, I can excuse a polk pull any day. Number 7, A Light for Attracting Attention. While this album never truly reaches the highs of the last two that I've mentioned, not a single track on this record disappointed me. I don't think I could honestly give a single song on this album a 10 out of 10, but I don't think I could give any below a 7 out of 10 either. Every song is in a perfect, safe spot of enjoyment. And while this does pull back some of the inventiveness and ambition of Radiohead projects, it knows when to push and when to pull, when to give and when to take. It balances hyper-aggression and energy with restraint and modesty. There are still mind-blowing production choices and hooks that stick with me for days, but it's not quite as profound as the best that Radiohead has to offer. It's just an extremely solid album all around. Number 6, Kid A. Kid A is an album that has steadily grown on me over the years, and I think the perfect example to show how is the opener. Everything in its right place simply confused me the first time I heard it. What did you guys get me into here? Why do you guys do this to me? As it was the first Radiohead song I had ever heard after driving through OK Computer. OK Computer floored me the first time with its ambitious and bombastic rock soundscape, and this was a strange electronic 4-on-the-floor glitched out repeating song. I didn't really know what to think the first time, or the second, or the third. But then the fourth? Still didn't know what to think. But then, the fifth, it really started to hit just a little different. It embodied the intangible quality of music, sending me into a trance, a state of enthralled hypnosis, unparalleled by conventional rock tracks. This foray into the unknown made me curious as to what the band would unearth on each new track, and I listened with care and intrigue. Not every track took me where I wanted to go, from the subsequent title track to Tree Fingers, but the national anthem, How to Disappear Completely, and motion picture soundtrack shattered my conceptions of what the band was and what they could do. While I know this is a fan favorite album, I'm not gonna have the conventional opinions. I consider myself a Radiohead outsider to this day and enjoy having a unique perspective. So disagree if you will, but keep it civil down below, or Thumb York is gonna find you in your sleep and beat your ass. Number 5, Hail to the Thief. 2 + 2 = 5, best opener. And that's saying something, considering 15 Step exists, and that's a certified banger. Hail to the Thief might not push the envelope in the way some of the other albums have for the band, but they execute Radiohead-isms amazingly here. I personally love There There, I Will, and Wolf at the Door. The last of those sees Tom's delivery totally change into something completely unrecognizable to the listener. We're used to Tom gently caressing the melody with his vocal cords, only briefly unleashing at times just to pull back. But here, we see him attacking with his lower register, setting an unmatched, sinister tone for the song, right from the start. There's almost a medieval quality to the instrumental, and it knows when to assault your ears and when to feign beauty. There There is one of the best grooves of their entire discography, and 2 + 2 = 5 is unrestrained insanity and power. I guess I really admire the energy found throughout a lot of the tracks in this album, and even on the slower tracks, there are hints of glory that keep me invested. I think you guys underrate this one. Number 4, The Bends. Part of me wants to not be a basic boy and put the Bends lower for not being as artistically sophisticated as some of their other releases like Amnesiac and Kid A. But in all honesty, this might be the album that I have the most fun listening to. It's simply an enhancement on the alternative rock energy of Pablo Honey, with the musicality, production, and inventiveness generally simply improved. There are some genuinely baffling songs like Just, which prances around chords and key changes like a bunny on Adderall, but it still reaches intricate, beautiful moments in songs like Street Spirit. Fake Plastic Trees is a gut punch, but my personal favorite is probably Nice Dream. It's beautiful, powerful, unique, and is one of the Radiohead songs I've returned to the most. There's so much to enjoy here, with the only weak song for me being Black Star. Every other song is either fun or a masterpiece, and I can't get enough of it. Number 3, A Moon-Shaped Pool. As I just finished talking about how much I loved the energy of the Bends, we go to the unquestionably saddest Radiohead album. This record is dark, and at times oppressively so. It's dreary and sad, but I suppose there is a dreamlike quality to it. Rather than a nightmare, it's an ethereal dream where you find yourself lost in thought, lost in time and space, unable to wake up. There are so many cases, particularly when the piano was used, where I felt an ethereal quality, simultaneously melancholic and tranquil. While this isn't an album that I return to regularly due to the weight of the listen, the artistry on display is unquestionable. I particularly appreciate it on tracks like Daydreaming, Deck's Dark, Desert Island Disc, Glass Eyes, and Present Tense. I appreciate the raw quality, not necessarily just in the musical choices, but in the emotional sense as well. It feels like an earnest and moving record, more so than any other by the band. While I'm not super familiar on Radiohead lore, I wouldn't be surprised to learn this album was deeply personal to Tom and the band as a whole, as it is clear on the tapestry of music they have concocted for our listening pleasure. Number 2, OK Computer. Alright, basically every song here is a classic. Even the songs that don't personally impact me quite as much as others manage to impress me on a technical sense every time. And it's important to note the importance this album had on the musical landscape even decades after its release. My personal favorite moments on the record are when the band goes dark and heavy, of which there are many. The entirety of Exit Music, Lucky, Paranoid Android, and the second half of Climbing Up the Walls. These are moments that will go down in musical history, and rightfully so. And even the moments of intimacy strike a temporally transcendent note. This album doesn't sound dated at all despite it being released so long ago, and there isn't a moment on the album that went uncared for. It shows with every single second being distinct from the last, every song being musically profound. It's a marvel that an album this good could place second to anything else by a single band, but that just goes to show you the skill of Radiohead. Number 1, In Rainbows. Likely my favorite album on my initial listen, this album has only improved with familiarity. Songs that I loved before are now my favorites of all time, and songs that I didn't care for, I now love. My favorite song off the album is different every week, fluttering between 15 Step, Nude, Jigsaw, Reckoner. The album is sonically reflective of the lively title, full of life and color. It ranges the entire spectrum of human emotion from unrelenting joy to the lowest depression, apathetic resignation, and unbridled anger. I find myself from moment to moment with my heart being torn out to being inspired to grooving along with infectious riffs and bass work. It has all of the vibrancy I want from a Radiohead production mixed with the intimacy of a moon-shaped pool. It delves into dark topics without making me viscerally depressed, and the soundscape feels designed around my personal taste. Even the ever-elusive videotape has grown on me, although I still find the drums extremely distracting from the song. From the moment the crunchy drums kick in on 15 Step to the cascading of tropical guitar riffs into danceable bass grooves, I was certain I was in for a classic. And it's a classic that keeps on giving. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoy, and subscribe for more Radiohead content. Let me know your ranking of the albums down below, and have a great day. Peace.